simplest way that we can do this, get everybody acclimated with how to do a wet layup. There's a whole bunch of different variations. Wet layup, resin infusion, pre-preg, which we're unfortunately unable to do. So we're just going to start off with basics. Nice flat food tray. Thank you guys that resources. It has a little bit of a texture, so you'll see later when this part cures that it adopts all of these details. And that's important so when you guys do the nose cone and the gel coat for any female plugs, because any of these scratches and imperfections will be reflected in that part. So I just want to use this because it's a really good example for it. We've got our 2 cuts of hemp. Flax?
Flax fiber. I thought it was hemp as well, but it's flax fiber.
You want it slightly oversized because we do have a bit of a dish so that you can get it cut really close to this. How you'll typically do the layup is that you'll mix this MBS, this is the hardener, this is the resin, and this is the hardener. The hardener says the ratio. Obviously you have to figure, you want about 30% resin mix by weight of the total part, because you don't want it too little, or else it becomes flimsy. If it has too much epoxy, then it can become brittle. Like, it's a very stiff component, but if it needs anything, it just has cracks, and you can't really fix that too well. So you mix this by weight, not too much because it's not a large surface area, and we're also doing 2 layups. So whatever you don't get in the first, you can get in the second. Tools are all the same. You'll use the bottom applicator, or a flat edge, like a squeegee. This is what you'll get the bulk of the resin infusion done with, because I'll pour it through the center, and then you just try and push it, but you don't want to pull enough where it starts to unsettle the fibers, because then the part will look bad, and you'll have inconsistencies with the part. So you'll pour it down the middle. Typically, you'll spread it down, and then once you get to the corners, once it's well saturated, you'll use the brush, because this will get into the corner, just because this won't. And the problem is, if you try and use this corner and try to shove it into the part, you can split the frays and create an opening, which isn't good either. So everyone's got these mixing cups, everyone's all settled. One run through on a double layup, so we typically almost always do every part with 2 layers of carbon, using flax as an example. It's cheaper. You'll want to saturate the first part, make sure that there isn't any air bubbles. It's hard to spot, but that's why we have the Bondo applicator, because if you use the brush, 1, you can get the bristles stuck in the 2 layers, and 2, you might not be applying enough force to get the resin to seep through, or else it'll sit kind of like a sandwich. And then when you pop off this part, you'll see at the bottom if it has air pockets and like a line of resin. So you'll get the first part well saturated. All of these frays have to be removed, but that's why we have excess. And then the second part is basically copy paste. You just lay it on top, a little bit more resin, and you kind of do it a bit more by feel. You'll see if it seeps through all the way. If you have any dry spots, you can always make more resin, but it's always advised you make about like 10 to 20% more resin than you need, so that it gives you some leeway, because it's not a consistent process. So yeah, that's basically what I'm doing.
For the second layup, can you put some epoxy on before you put the
flax
down?
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. The reason why I don't do it is because I get this so saturated that it'll be really tacky. I can just lay this gently on top, squeeze it down. That way the bottom half of this fiber already has a decent amount of epoxy. You just want to put it on top so that you have consistency throughout the part. Because the problem is, if, let's say I pour it, I don't spread it, I'll have a pop where the fluid is just sitting in the middle, and that can create air pockets. Resin to harden.
5 to 1 by weight, right?
5 to 1 by weight. 80 grams of the resin to 14 grams. Because when I go to do the second layer of layup, then it'll get in the way. Or like, see how this one's folded up?
Yeah.
It'll completely mess us up. So you just have to make sure that that's all done. Another warning as well.
Yep.
If you get the mixture wrong, the resin and hardener will react with the plastic and melt the cup itself. Or if you let it sit like if you take too long, it'll either harden completely or produce enough heat where it starts melting the plastic.
Scrape the bottom, make sure you're getting all the stuff at the bottom.
Yeah, scrape it, bring it back up. Really want to get into my corner. See how much it lifts? Really need to get some weight. Once you saturate the whole part, it'll be easier. So we'll just move this over. It's pretty flexible, so you can kind of massage it into the contours. But since this radius is so tight, it can cause it to lift at the corner, so it won't adopt the radius as much. Oftentimes you can also just cut it in the middle and then have it overlap, because then it'll just sit.
So for this kind of material, you can tell when it's saturated because it goes dark. For carbon
Yes,
fiber,
for
you
carbon
won't be able
fiber,
to
you
tell.
can't really tell. You can tell based on how shiny it is.
Okay.
Um,
It's kind of like how you deal with like wet paint.
yeah.
Okay.
See, as I work it in, it starts to change color, and it's not as shiny.
Yeah.
It's really starting to seep.
So is the amount of epoxy just something you eyeball, or is it actually supposed to be by weight with the fabric?
I believe it is by weight of the fabric, because the mix ratio, like the perfect mix ratio is, I think, 30 to 32% by weight of the fabric itself.
Oh,
If it has
really?
more, then it'll become brittle and it can crack. And then if it's too little, then usually the part's garbage, because you
Okay.
won't have sufficient infusion. You'll have air pockets, you'll have inconsistencies in the epoxy. So for the next layer, like when you guys do it, let's just do 100 and then 17,
Okay.
because that's literally what the ratio is for the hardening. Feel the weight as you're mixing it,
Yeah.
because the resin is so much heavier. But then it becomes consistent over time, but you have to like scoop and lift. It takes about a minute to get it really saturated.
If you can't get perfect on this, is it better to go high or low on the hardener?
Decreases your working time of the part
If you go high.
if you go high,
Okay.
but like you have to like really go like 10 grams or more on the hardener.
So 1 or 2 grams different either way isn't gonna really
Yeah,
change
it doesn't
anything?
have like if you put 16 versus 15, when you do 100 grams of the product, it's not gonna be end of the world. But the final result will, like, we'll see how this turns out when the part's cured, right?
How long does it take to cure? Is it 24 hours? Like,
I'd give it 24 hours, yeah. But I've never worked with flax before.
uh-huh.
It might be sooner, it might be more.
Okay.
Do not get epoxy on the snips. It just relieves a bit of the tension, so when I go like this,
Got it. It's like a pie cut thing.
yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
it's like a pie cut. And then we'll do the same for this side. This one.
No pocket paper. Get little strands of it in.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It all looks the same after.
Yeah.
So it's lifting. What we'll do for the next layout is we'll cut straight to the edge of the tray so that I can just willingly lift up. So we're learning we'll do better for the next one.
Is it best to have a little bit less slack on the edge because that's what's weighing it down and lifting it, right?
Yeah, so we want to be pretty close.
Okay, so should
Since
we
it's
cut
going
it down
vertically?
a bit more?
Yeah, but that's something we could do now
Okay.
as this sets. This is a completed product. You'll have to give it 24 hours to cure.